Hey everyone, and welcome to lesson 14 of our beginner guitar course. And today we're talking about power chords and octaves. And we talked about power chords briefly in lesson 11 when we were breaking down how chords are built. And the one thing that we said was distinguishing about power chords is that they leave out the third degree of the chord. So we know that a major or minor chord is built with our root, our third, and our fifth. So when we leave the third out, we no longer know if it's a major or minor chord. We just know that it is a chord that's identified by its root note. So let's say we take a G chord. Typically your G is going to have your G is your root, your B is your third, and then your D is your fifth. Well, in this case, we're leaving the B out because that's our third, and we're just going to have our G and our D. And in that case, we just hear a D chord. We don't know if it's major or minor, which gives us some versatility of playing over that chord. So in this case, we are going to just show you what a power chord looks like and how easy it is to use this, because again, it's one of those movable shapes. So we're going to start off with finding for our G power chord our G note, which is, as you probably know already, our third fret of the low E string. Then we want to find a D note, which if we go on our A string, we have our A, and then we have our B, our C, and our D is the fifth fret. So what we're doing from that first note is we're going one string lighter and 2 frets over to our fifth fret, and that's going to be our ring finger on there. And then we're going to take our pinky finger and put it on the next string beside that, which is our D string, 5th fret. So now we've got our 3rd fret of our low E string, our 5th fret of our A string, and our 5th fret of our D string. And what you'll notice right off the bat is we've got that G note on our low E, and then we have an octave of that note. And what that means is, if you remember our piano example, you have one note followed by the next consecutive pitch of that same note. So if we remember that we have basically from a keyboard perspective, if we look at our G and then we move up the keyboard to our next G, they're identified by the same note name, but it's just a pitch that's higher. However, they do sound to be the same note. And that's just how octaves work, as notes repeat themselves in higher pitches across the audible spectrum. We have octaves of that same note. And you can find those all the way across the fretboard. We already know again that if we play anything on the high E string, it is the same notes as playing on the low E string, so we would also have a G up here. So if we were to play those notes, that's our G on our low E string, that's a G on our D string, that 5th fret, and then we can play another G here on our high E string, 3rd fret again. So these notes, they repeat over the guitar or on a piano, and they are identified again by the same note name, but they do have a slightly different pitch. So when we're looking at this for a power chord, that's our octave element of the power chord between our index finger and our pinky finger. And then this string that's in between, held down by our ring finger, is our 5th degree. So in this case, that is our D note. And when you play those all together, you get this sound. Which again is a G chord. You can hear that it's a G, but you don't know if it's a major or minor chord. And that's super useful because you can play notes over top that would be either major or minor scales, let's say. Either of them will work over this chord because it doesn't identify major or minor. So I'll show that for you now. I'm just going to play that G power chord underneath a major and a minor scale to show you that this actually works. So here we go. So hopefully that shows you just the strength that you can have in a power chord, where let's say you're playing a song and maybe it's hard to get to that minor version of the chord or the major version of the chord, and you just want something that's going to just keep that rhythm going but not have to worry about either being major or minor. The power chord is going to come in handy for that. And again, it's a movable shape. So you can be playing that G, you can be playing it as an A, you can play it as a B, a C, a D, there's an E, and all I'm doing is just sliding up and letting my index finger on that low E string dictate what the root is. So whatever note that's sitting on, that's the root of the chord, that's what the chord's going to sound like. And you could do the same thing on the A string. So if I'm on the A string and I go to my 3rd fret again, I know that that is a D note, or a C note, sorry. And a C note, with that same shape, where you've got the first note being held by your index, and then you go 1 string lighter and 2 frets over, we now have this same shape again for our power chord, and that is our C power chord right there. And our D power chord, and our E power chord, and our F power chord, and there's our G again. So this shape is really usable, especially on electric guitar, which I'll show you in a second here. Because as soon as you add a little bit of that distortion to it, it thickens that sound up and it gives you a lot to kind of work with. The other thing to take a look at today is octaves. And all you have to do for an octave is actually just remove that ring finger out, because we already know that we've been playing the octave between our index finger and our pinky finger. So all I'm doing is I'm slightly resting my index against that next string so that it's not making any noise. And then I'm playing those 2 notes together. So that is a G octave, that's an A octave, a B octave, a C octave, and a D octave. And the same thing works on the next string as well. So let's say we start again with that C note on our A string, 1 string lighter, another string lighter, and 2 frets over, where that pinky now sits, and we can play those octaves there as well. C octave, D octave, E octave, F octave, and our G octave. And this gives us a lot of options to be able to play. You can move this shape much faster if you want to. And get that octave sound that you want without having to do too much extra work from what we already know. So you remove or add that ring finger to make it a power chord, where we're adding that 5th in or removing it. So on the one hand, the octave is just root, and our power chord is root, 5th, root again. And again, simple options here, very movable chords, but it gives a lot for us to be able to use as we're playing songs. So I'm going to jump over to the electric guitar. I'm going to put a little distortion on there for you and show you just how usable those are on electric guitar as well. And you'll probably recognize the sound from a lot of songs that you've heard and say, oh, okay, that's how they're doing that. Okay, so now I got my electric guitar. Just so you have a reference here, here's what a C chord, or just an open chord, sounds like with this distortion on. Okay, and now I'm going to start playing some power chords for you. So again, we will start with that G power chord. That's that C power chord. Back to the G. That's the D. The C, and that is the G again. So you can hear that just sounds like a full big chord, even though I'm only playing really 2 different notes, one with the octave and just the 5th in there. But on electric guitar with that distortion, it fills that sound out, and it gives you that versatility of not having to change that shape too much, so it's very movable. But you can also then allow whoever else is playing with you to play whatever they want, major, minor, doesn't matter, because you are just holding down that root with the octave and the 5th with no distinguishing 3rd. And then you have your octaves, right? So your octaves, let's say we go from that C again. And you can do like a... That's just octaves. I've now dropped the third, I've dropped the fifth. It's just root with the octave, and it just gives you a lot of options, especially on electric guitar, to be able to play between that power chord and the octave. So I hope that was a helpful lesson for you. I hope that you can see now how usable these shapes are, and just by dropping out that third, how versatile these chords can be. And that you can even incorporate them into your songs. Again, it's another way without learning a bunch of different chord shapes to be able to get these chords for certain songs. So you may again run into a spot where you see a chord that you don't know how to play, and you can jump into a power chord version of that particular chord and be able to play that instead of having to learn the other one if you can't get to it right now. And then, as you work on those chord development and you can get to that chord later, you may choose to use whatever the traditional style of playing that chord is instead of the power chord. But at least for right now, it gives you those options to be able to play more songs with what you know and can achieve. So, thank you so much for watching. Again, I hope this was really helpful. And as always, love you guys.